All right, I'll call our CDA meeting for November 16th to order. Roll call, Tim?
Would you like me to call, or I've got everyone recorded?
Have you got it? We're
Yep.
good. We know that Jeff Tews is absent.
Yep.
Okay. Minutes, for approval of minutes, unless somebody has something they need to change.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion by Kristen.
Second.
Second by Gary. Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Public comment. Is there anyone here that would like to make a public comment? Nope. Okay, presentations. Local employer housing needs.
All
Mr.
right.
Sam Ballweg.
We're very pleased to have Sam Ballweg here from Andrews Manufacturing. So as you may recall at our meeting last month, you charged staff with inviting in area business owners, and Sam was gracious enough to be our first presenter. I would note, though, that we had two other presenters scheduled this evening, and both of them unfortunately had last-minute conflicts, and one of them being Dave Weishoff from DCAR. So he said he'd be more than happy to come back. But our other presenter this evening, Rebecca Giroux from WIDA, had an unexpected illness in the family, so she's going to have to be rescheduled as well. So a little bit of an audible this evening, but we are very happy that Sam is here. And Sam, if you'd like to tell us and tell the group about whatever you may want to about housing.
So I'll start. I'm sure you guys are familiar with us. We're Andrews Manufacturing. We're a structural steel fabricator just down the road. We're currently sitting around just under 100 employees. Very clear that we are under 100 employees in today's environment. But we've been kind of teetering around that 90 to 100 for the last year. I did have them pull where our employees actually live, which is something I don't typically look at at this level. But we currently sit at 31% of my employees live in the village of Wanakee. The next closest would be Lodi, which is at 11%. Madison is 8%. Sauk in Sauk City, if you combine Prairie du Sac and Sauk City, they're at 11%. And then Dane, DeForest, and Sun Prairie all are at 5%. So I know Tim asked me, how does that compare to historic? If I go through and I looked at our list, which I did by our oldest employees, the guys that have been there 25 plus years, that number's closer to 50 to 70% of my employees are actually in Wanakee. So, and I think that would be the case too if we looked at Andrews Manufacturing 25 years ago. Probably 75% of our employees lived and worked in Wanakee. That's definitely changing over time. We are definitely recruiting further away. Part of our efforts, our recruiting efforts in years past was definitely word of mouth of, hey, your brother's looking for your job, your wife's looking for a job. And we hired a lot of referrals that way and a lot of neighborhood kids. That's definitely been changing. We're definitely using outsourcing all the time. We're talking to those temp agencies, bringing in people that way, hiring recruiters to do that type of work. And then word of mouth is still really important for us, but if I get a kid from Sun Prairie, now he's inviting his friend from Sun Prairie. So we're definitely diversifying ourselves in that way too, as our employee base has grown, so has our recruiting efforts. So as far as the quality of the people that we're bringing in, we do prefer the people from outside of Madison. Madison's a different market. We find a lot of luck from Sauk and Lodi. The hardworking farm kids that grew up on a farm, especially the guys that are used to running a welder, running equipment like that, they're just not getting that experience in Madison, whereas we're finding that a lot from the kids in DeForest has a really strong fab lab, similar to what Wanakee has. Lodi really definitely emphasizes the trades. We just don't see that in Madison, so we're not getting that level of recruit. Madison College has done a nice job. They do have a welding program. We do spend time interacting with that school quite a bit, making sure that they know we're here, sending people into, whether it's teach a day in the class, go to job fairs, all that stuff. We get good employees from that. I think we've had better luck when we train the employees ourselves, so finding someone that's interested, bringing them in and teaching them the skills that we really need. The kids that are coming in from the welding schools are coming in with good background, but they really don't have the specialization that we require. So really what we really want is just a person that's motivated, willing to work hard, willing to get their hands dirty, and enjoy the idea of building something with their hands. We'll bring people in that might think they enjoy that, but once they get dirty and have to work a 40-plus hour week, they tend to burn out quickly. So we need guys that come in and realize that, hey, our work is a little dirty and it's hard work, but at the end of the day, we're going to pay you well and make sure we recognize you for your efforts. What'd I miss?
Housing. Any thoughts about how housing in the area affects employees or the ability to attract employees?
Yeah, and so it's Wanakee specifically, right?
Or the close nearby area?
Yeah. Again, our guys tend to want space is one thing. I would say a majority of my employees that live outside of Wanakee like to have, I mean, they aspire to have an acre of land plus. They want to have their barn, they want to have their toys. So I did talk to a couple employees, talking that I'm coming in here and asked, why are you in Wanakee? Why have you not moved to Wanakee? And a lot of them are like, well, I like having my couple acres where I can put all my toys. They like to have their animals. So I definitely have more of that level of employee. If you look at my office staff, they tend to be a little more, focused on having a house in the neighborhood. But we tend to attract a more blue collar employer base that wants to have the space. I know that's something that's hard to find in Wanakee. I mean, you guys all know it. We have great neighborhoods. I myself live in Wanakee. But if you're looking for a little more of that, the land that comes with the house, you're just not able to find it here. The value or the cost to live in Wanakee is definitely high. My employees recognize that. The guys that live in Madison live in apartments. They're not buying houses in Madison, they're living in the apartments there. I know she told of my employees, of the 93 employees, 11 of them are in apartments, the rest are in houses, so most of those apartments are the Madison-based guys. I have 2 guys in apartments in Wanakee. I think even the Wanakee apartments here are relatively expensive compared to the market, so I know they tend to be in Madison, Prairie du Sac, Sun Prairie, if they're living in an apartment still. I think people would love to live in Wanakee, but I think there is a cost prohibitive nature to that when they can live in Lodi and DeForest and Dane, and it's significantly cheaper.
Sam, in your breakdown of like the percentages of people that live in the different communities, did you look at, and you might have to kind of guess or go by gut on this, the level of employee in that mix? Like, is it mostly management that lives here, or were your production, kind of that different career?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely, of the 31% that's in Wanakee, I would say it's a pretty even split of management versus shop floor employees. I think longevity would probably play a big part in it, though. The guys that have been there 25+ years are probably, a good chunk of them are still Wanakee based. So they've been here, they've put a lot into their savings and have probably chosen to be here, so.
Are you good with taking questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I should have probably
Oh,
asked.
sorry.
Oh, we're all good. I just want to make sure you were good with it. So, with the 31 for Wanakee, does that include Westport, I'm assuming?
Yes, that includes Westport.
Okay, probably zip code, or whatever, so, okay. And you mentioned that a lot of them look for land and toys and things like that. So is it really an affordability thing for Wanakee, or that just have a choice? Because if we're looking at a couple acres of land and toys and everything, could they still come to Wanakee? I'm just curious what your
Yeah,
thoughts
well,
are.
that's a good question. I think it's a combination of both, though, right? Can you find a house with land and toys for the same price of what you could buy in Lodi and Dane? I mean, I don't think so.
No, we just don't have we don't
Right.
have that size lot.
I'm picturing some of the lots out in Westport, right? I mean, they're a little older, they got a full acre, but for what you're paying to be in Westport versus in Dane or Lodi, it's probably significantly more.
I was just trying to figure out, is it that they can't afford to live in Wanakee, or we don't have what they really want here in Wanakee?
I'll tell you, all my employees can afford to live in Wanakee. We pay them well, we've told them many times that, if they want to make that decision and they've been here long enough, they could afford to live in Wanakee.
Okay. Well, so your employee base may be a little different than a lot of others.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're not paying minimum wage. None of my guys are making minimum wage. We don't hire at minimum wage. And we take really good care of our guys, and they'd be happy to tell you that our state is to pay our guys better than the rest of their competitors. We want to keep the best employed in Endress.
Which is great.
Yep.
I was just trying to, as you were saying that, and why housing may be prohibitive to them, it sounds like maybe the type of housing wouldn't necessarily be an affordable necessarily housing. It might be that we would have to say we're gonna have several acres that are designed, or probably 50 acres that might have several 2-acre
Right.
lots
Yep.
and different things. And then you brought up animals, where they can have different animals that they can't have in Wanakee. So I get that part of it. Okay.
You're probably really talking more about the renters, the apartment people that, would that be an issue with that group of people more so in terms of financial ability? Why are they renting in Madison? Is the rent really that less expensive in Madison than it is out here? I understand Lodi and Sauk and that, but is Madison also less expensive than Wanakee for rent?
I don't think so. And of the Madison guys, I got 2 that are renters in Madison. So I don't think that's necessarily that it's cheaper or more expensive. That's probably an access to their friends or being younger and wanting to be closer to downtown.
That's something my wife has always said. She goes, why? If a young person had a choice to live in Madison or Wanakee, they'd live in Madison. They wouldn't live here. So that's always something you have to weigh into.
And that's one thing I've always told my guys I take a lot of pride in is filling out that form when they're applying for their first mortgage, because I love to see them settling in, finding a house, and being able to take that ownership of something. And then as an employer, it's obviously something that I look at as, they're setting their roots here. They're choosing Endress as a long-term destination too, so.
So as an employer, do you see anything that we should be doing differently for other employers? I mean, I know you're focused on yourself and your business, but what do you see that we could maybe consider from housing? And the
Again,
affordability factor.
Yeah, with my experience being on the board at 1.2, I know it's a difficult balance in Wanakee. I think that you guys are doing a lot of the right things at the board level and at the village level of trying to create options. Bringing in more apartments I think is important, and I think, we're definitely doing that. I'm witness to what's happening in town. The new neighborhood developments, and while, I don't think they're necessarily low income or low cost housing, I think they're at least providing some more options that weren't there before. Spent a lot of time, studying the economy just like everyone else is these days. Housing's crazy, and there's nothing you can do whether you're in Sun Prairie or Wanakee or Middleton. Housing costs are just gonna keep climbing. We're part of the problem. Steel costs are going up. You have a steel beam in your house, it's worth twice what it was before. And being in the construction industry, I just know even apartments, everything's going up in price. And that's something that's beyond your control, beyond my control. But yeah, it's something you just have to be cognizant and aware of is, hey, we gotta be able to keep providing options for people that they can live and work in our community.
You had mentioned that at one point in time, the people your employee base was 50 to 75% lived in Wanakee or in Westport Wanakee. And now it's down to 31%, and numbers aren't that important, it's just the trend that's important. Is that unique to Endress Manufacturing, or is that the construction industry in general, or the manufacturing industry in general? The fact that a lot of industries talk about it's hard to find people, hard to find personnel doing all kinds of creative things to get people to walk in the shop. And number 2, you're also talking about tradespeople, which from what I've heard, it's a little more of a challenge at that level because everybody wants a tech job, especially in Dane County. So is what you're facing unique to just you, or is it more expansive than that?
I think it's a little bit of both. Again, I could give examples of, I'm in a steel peer group, right, of other steel fabricators similar to me that are kind of spread across the country. I would say that's similar, that they have issues of getting people in from the downtown areas. If they had an office and there's a guy who's in downtown LA, it's terrible. Can't find anybody. LA is a terrible place to try to run a business these days. A guy in Denver, they definitely are bringing guys in from an hour away to try to find employees. So I know that it's an issue. Trades are definitely more difficult because, especially Wanakee, the school system here is promoting, hey, go to college, go to a 4-year degree. You guys can tell me how many of the graduates of Wanakee High School go get a 4-year degree? 99%? So we're not able to recruit a high school kid anymore. And 25 years ago, I think half our employees were Wanakee High School graduates that came in the day they graduated and applied for a job. So it's definitely changing. Wanakee is no exception to that, and I think, they are definitely promoting a higher level of education rather than joining a trade. So, Al, I'm sorry, I kind of ran around your question there, but are we trying to pull people in from out of town? For sure.
Well, that's what I'm getting at is housing, obviously that's our mission right now, is the housing aspect of it. And is there something we can provide or assist or make that would help you, and not just you, I don't mean
Yep,
manufacturing,
employees.
in general, the workforce, help find employees to fill the database of people they need to operate.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't think my employees are in Wanakee anymore. I mean, the community just put on a little job fair, right? And they were looking for employees for the Wanakee area businesses. The chamber put that on. I didn't bother applying because I don't think my employees are in Wanakee. I don't think I'm going to find an employee that lives in Wanakee that hasn't already applied or hasn't already started working at Endress, you know? They're just not out there. So I think I have to go outside Wanakee to find new employees.
How far do you go as far as your recruitment strategy? Like, are you targeting certain tech colleges, or are you?
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite tech colleges that we found was Southwest Tech, which is down by Platteville, right? That tends to be where we get our best kids. Like, I'll take almost any graduate from that school because every single one we've had has come in ready to work really hard and have a pretty good background already of welding. They're ready to go. Like I was saying about Madison College, those guys tend to need a little more seasoning already. So, I mean, yeah, we're willing to go we travel to basically all 4 tech schools in southern Wisconsin and even one up in Lake Eau Claire.
Any other peers outside of Denver and LA? Because those are expensive markets for somebody to live in as well.
Yeah, there's one down in, outside of Florida, outside of Orlando. I mean, there's a great example of a steel fabricator that we buy a lot of steel from. They're in a small town outside of Omaha, Nebraska called Norfolk. They employ half the town though. They're a big steel mill and that's their thing is they can't find people either. Part of the reason we can't buy our steel right now is because they can't make the steel fast enough. Because they've hired everybody in town already. There's nobody left to hire. So same problem that everyone's talking about. There just isn't enough people around.
So you're saying we should create more people?
I don't think there's control over that, Chris.
We'll make my career
That is
that.
our task. To be very
It's
clear.
the front line, front headline of the
Yeah, I mean,
paper.
There's a
See,
bigger
it's
topic. We could talk about
Yeah.
It's an
immigration.
18-year process.
Sorry, I had to put a little light humor in there.
Yeah, I mean, immigration is something that's great, that I would love to see more immigration nationwide, but in Wanakee, I don't know how welcoming we are to immigrants, but that's something we could look into too. I mean, that's maybe something to spend some time and energy on, of providing some immigration housing of some sort to get, again, diversity and just more people into town.
Do you think our business community would grab onto that? I mean, I look at, Wisconsin Dells is big. I mean, they bring in a lot of foreign workers.
Yep.
Because they don't, and they put up housing for those workers.
Yep.
It's not that I don't know if the community's participating. Tim, maybe you can find that out. You know, you look at the big hotels up there, they've put up a lot of housing. I don't know if their local municipal has helped them with funding for that. I don't know. Maybe that's something we could look at too.
Yep.
You know,
Their
if
models
it's a
obviously
collaborative.
get the seasonality of it.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, if you could do something like that, I would definitely be interested of being a part of whatever program you put together along with the other major businesses in Wanakee. I'm sure they'd be happy to recruit and develop talent out of there.
In my former role at WDC, talent attraction was a huge focus of ours, and some of the things that they were looking at was celebrating the diversity in communities from some of the foreign workers, like, you know, in areas that had like a large Hmong population, having specific celebrations for that. I think we do a really good job with Germans, but you know, I think that there's other examples throughout Wisconsin, so not even that far away, where they've done that. They've really kind of embraced that whole fabric aspect.
Greene County has done some interesting things. Los Dells, which happened a few years ago, has, yeah, there's been some like encouraging of people to come and embrace the culture that they've brought. And yeah, we're talking a lot about immigration as a strategy too at our office right now.
Other questions for Sam? He's loving answering questions, so
He does.
I mean, this is our opportunity.
I'm a
So-
Sauk Prairie High School graduate, so I'm happy to hear that they're willing to work.
We got a lot of them.
Yeah, excellent.
So part of what I'm trying to figure out is, and I know it's not a bright line delineation, but from my mind, there's some difference, there's overlap, significant overlap between workforce housing and low-income housing. From what I hear from you is you're more interested in perhaps the workforce housing, because your typical employee has some form of post-high school education.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I think if I looked at that stat, I'm guessing it's maybe only 10% of my guys have gone on to any type of welding school, like I said, I prefer to bring them out right out of high school as long as they have the right desire and intentions and be able to train them myself, so.
All right. Any other questions for Sam?
Yeah, thanks guys
Sam?
for having me.
Hey,
I know you probably miss being here all on a regular basis, but thank you,
I
thank you
got my
for,
nights free though.
thank you for coming in and sharing with us.
Yeah, thank you guys
Very
for what you're
helpful.
doing and spending the time. I know it's a service, so I appreciate you guys spending the time to do this as well.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you very much, Sam.
You're welcome anytime.
Night.
All right, so, go on. Report from Tim Salmon.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, with our other speakers, we'll try and get those rescheduled to some upcoming CDA meetings. So just a few updates that I had. So one of the things we talked about last time was the suite of housing legislation, AB 603 through 609. All 7 of these bills have made it through the Assembly, and it's that package is awaiting scheduling in the Senate. So it's kind of on park right now. I spoke to someone last week, and they are of the thought that it's going to be a little while before these get action by the Senate. There's some internal discussions happening amongst that caucus about some of the language within the bill. So this person's thought was that it's going to be a little while, but I'll certainly keep you updated on that status. So,
Is that because they're waiting for perhaps the federal act to be decided one way or another? Because there's a fair amount of affordable housing stuff inside the new act, if it were ever.
Yeah, so that has something to do with it. Some, I think, has just some of the substance of the text in that language. I don't know, there may be some lack of unanimity, I'll say. I don't know if how much that is a prevailing factor, but that's still working through the political process. So maybe this person is wrong, but he, I think, has a pretty good pulse on the state of things. So more to come on that. Wanted to update you all on TID 10 status. So we have been doing some sort of starts and stops. We are currently, staff are working with the DOT. One of the areas that we're working on is the potential for traffic improvements, could be signals, turn lanes, et cetera, at the Hogan and 19 intersection. And so there's a lot of needed information yet on behalf of the DOT before we can move forward with that piece of it. So that's one of the things that we're still working on. Right now, for example, one of the things is that intersection, as you all know, is 3 legs. The entrance on the north side is a private drive. It's not a public right-of-way, so that has a bearing on the degree to which DOT would allow signals on a state highway. So that's, we may have to run some warrants and do some other traffic analysis before we can, with confidence, move forward when and at what cost that project improvement would be factored into the pro forma. So.
Tim, did Roundabout come up even? Did Roundabout come up even then with that?
We did, so our village engineer and I talked about that, not specifically with DOT yet. That could be an improvement, but because of the proximity to the existing one at 113I and 19, that might not meet warrants. So we need to, after talking to them, it sounds like provide more data.
So you haven't been into Forest then?
I have not been into Forest, not
Or the
recently.
Fox Valley? Yeah, it's like 3 or 4 roundabouts in a row everywhere.
You get dizzy by the time you're done.
So to put 2 by each other doesn't seem that outrageous to me when I look at those. That's all.
Okay.
And it would seem to make sense with the businesses there, because it would just be an easy right off of it as opposed to going into the roundabout. They could just go off. So,
Yeah, okay.
as a thought,
Yep, no, it's certainly on the table. A consideration with roundabouts is land consumption and the degree to which that may eat into some of the developable acreage. Not much in that area, but something else to consider. So, anyway, so no action on that, TID 10, obviously, for next month. At this point, we are tentatively looking at let me get my date right here. the 18th, which would be the normal third Tuesday of January. However, because of Martin Luther King Jr. Day falling on that Monday, the village board meeting may domino to Tuesday, which may domino this group to Wednesday. So that was one of my questions is would the 19th, which is that Wednesday, be an option?
You said January, did you mean
January.
December?
No,
No,
January.
January, yeah.
It is for me.
Okay,
Yeah, me too.
Yes, yeah.
so that's, okay,
I'll be gone.
okay.
We can zoom you in.
So you can zoom me in.
Jim,
So, yeah,
Can you, I'm just
don't
thinking
think
if we
so.
have any other committee meetings on that Wednesday.
I don't think so.
I'll look into it. We're just looking at
Parks is always the
options
second
right now, but
Wednesday.
Is that, well, Public Works?
Public Works is 4th.
Okay, I think we'll be all right then.
so
If you
That-
Just
then-
double check it, just to make
Yep,
sure that we don't. have any
19th
conflicts.
is, at least sounds like for a quorum, that would be a date that works. Now, then another question I would have is, would you, and this is more for you, Chris, is, would you want to double stack Tuesday with the village board and this group either before or after?
No.
So you want that,
Clear enough?
Yeah, it's clear.
yeah,
I mean, we generally use our full hour and a half for this meeting and double stacking it with the board meeting, unless, if we knew right now and say the board meeting's gonna be like one item on the agenda in 10 minutes, then fine, but if it's an hour and a half, 2 hour meeting, that's
this-
hard on some of the board members, just from a length time.
Yep. okay. That's what I thought that would be the case, but wanted to check. And so at that meeting, that would be the public hearing, and so I imagine there would be a fair bit of discussion on the project plan and whatever commentary there may be from the public at that January meeting. So we'll get that scheduled to you once we get the dates finalized, but that's the latest for that. The project plan will hopefully be available that week of 11/29, right after Thanksgiving. That's what we're shooting for. Obviously, when we get that, we'll make that available to you for your consideration and review, give you a little bit of time then over the month of December to evaluate that.
I have a question on your agenda, your proposed timetable, Tim.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a line that says CDA, make a motion to call for a public hearing, in parens, optional, end paren. What does that mean?
Oh, so as the way the statute's lined up, that's an optional procedure. The CDA or the body, whether it's Plan Commission or CDA, doesn't have to do that. So to convene a meeting just to do that seems unnecessary. If you'd like to,
We can't make it as part of one of these meetings, whether it's December or November? My only comment is only because I know there's gonna be some feedback on January 18th. I guess the more public information that's out there, the better.
okay,
It's just my
Okay.
perception. It's not a big deal, it's just formality, I think.
I will have an answer for you
Okay.
shortly. Let's see, so that I think is the latest on TID 10 status. One of the things I wanted to make you aware of is the MPO transit study results. The members of the MPO, we did a Zoom call last week, I think it was the 10th, with the results of the transit study. That meeting, which lasted about an hour, is posted on the village's YouTube site, so I encourage you to check that out. Just some highlights from that. So this, as we were talking about housing with employers, this survey looked at how transportation impacts employers and the relationship to attracting and or retaining employees. 326 area businesses were invited to participate in the survey. 28 respondents. 12 of the 28 were interested in convening more about perhaps partnerships with each other, about providing transit. The representatives from the MPO looked at the various areas or options available: public transit, private transit, and then transportation network companies working with Lyft or Uber or things like that. And then in addition, they promoted what's called roundtripmadison.org. I think that used to be called Rideshare. That is a service that connects individuals with carpool partners, state van pools, park and rides, metro bus routes, and bike buddies. That allows you to register on their website and then connect with people who are either coming or going to the same area that you are. I think there's, according to the MPO, there's something like 2,800 individuals registered with Dane County and are active on that site, something like that. But information, like I said, is available on the YouTube site. And if you'd like, we have the slide presentation as a PDF, and be happy to share that with you as well. Include that in the future. So that is it for that one, and I guess that is all I have really in my updates. One just final thing as before we move into ongoing discussion of possible metrics. I had an opportunity to talk to the deputy administrator from the village of Shorewood, north side of Milwaukee. That community in, I think it's March of this year, voted to extend one of their TIDs, and they're in the process of doing the exact same thing that we are. And they anticipated that they said they budgeted about 12 to 18 months because this is the first time they've done anything like this. And they said they wanted a long sort of both public and educational outreach on all the different things. So some of the things that we're starting to do with having the speakers come in, I think is similar things to what they're doing. Other communities in the recent past, this past year, Verona, Prairie du Chien, and Waukesha. Waukesha, I think, adopted one in late 2020, did a TID extension to create the Affordable Housing Fund. So there is more traction from communities throughout Wisconsin. Included in your packet, this will be a segue to the next agenda item. I included La Crosse, policy from La Crosse for their loan program, their Affordable Housing Fund loan program, as another example. We don't necessarily need to dive into the meat of that, but
As we're gonna dive into that, we can dive into that to a certain degree.
If you want to,
I think it's
I mean,
a
you're
good thing
welcome
for us
to.
to dive into a little bit. You were talking about calendars before. I just wanted to ask our members, I think our next meeting is December 22nd.
first or second,
21st?
yeah. It's
I just want to make sure everybody's good
21.
with that, that we're gonna make sure we have a quorum for that date, since it's right near Christmas. Good?
I'm good.
I will not, my son is having surgery that day.
Good?
I'll be in South Carolina.
You'll be in South Carolina, so we have 2 out for sure, so, but we have 4 confirmed, so we have a quorum, so we're okay.
Okay,
I just wanted to make sure, because it's so close to that, so.
Yep.
If we needed to make any changes, now we can proceed, sorry.
no,
We're
no
kind of
problem.
going through your calendar, I just wanted to get that out there quick.
And maybe we can have a couple of our speakers from this evening reappear for next month, so. All right, I have next item, I guess, is turning over to you all. More discussion on possible metrics and criteria for the Affordable Housing Fund distribution. So other than that La Crosse piece, I didn't put anything new in, so just to recap, I think the only, at least for my notes, clear direction we got was that 75-25 separation. There seemed to be general consensus on that. That was gonna be the split, so we'll focus the fund 75% on affordable housing, 25 on the other housing force. So with that, I'd say just turn it over to you all to re-continue to the discussion to whatever extent you want to on those policy areas, whether from La Crosse or from any of the other information or from the commentary you may have.
I have one request just for the future, for you to, if you could research for us. You brought up the other communities that are looking at or are using the extension of the TID by a year. Can you look and see how many TIDs they currently have open, find out from them?
Oh, sure.
To see what their, I'm curious what their TIF usage is at this point. And then, are they trying to promote programs that are going to be similar to La Crosse's, that there's paybacks in, or is it gonna be more of a grant type situation where those funds wouldn't be replenished? So I'm just curious how they're
Yep, sure.
going about that.
That's a good comment. So that's something that seems to be common is loan versus grant. That was one of the commentary in, I think it was a Waukesha, that Prairie du Chien, I think in their adopting ordinance, there was a statement about wanting to ensure that there was a replenishable fund rather than just dispersing it through grant. And perhaps that's something to consider as well.
Yeah, and as I look through lacrosses, it looks like they're bringing funds back in that process, so.
I didn't think they were requesting that much payback. They were,
No,
it had to be, it dealt with, you know, if you sold the property in a certain amount of time, it came back, and, it seems to me, my gut reaction is if it requires payback, you're probably cutting the use of the program probably by three quarters. Would be just a,
yeah, I noticed I think they're charging 1%, I think, interest for 20 years, unless it's sold. I wasn't sure on what happened at year 20. If it was just gone, or that principal still stayed there, and is it supposed to be?
I think some of the housing programs, you probably know this better than I do, there is a duration. If you keep your promise, like basically, and fulfill all of the requirements during that duration, it just kind of goes away.
I've seen as many that do
Yeah.
that versus pay back the principal, yeah.
That just wasn't clear to me in here, as I was reading through their policy. If it was, all right, the balance is still there, is it because maybe they've paid down their house?
Could be.
Regular loan, now that
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
loan is there, maybe they started a loan on that they pay principal and interest at that point? I don't know, I was just curious. But I think I hear what you're saying, with, you know, the usage and what happened.
Typically,
well, I think the scope of what you're, you know, allowing people to do with that money is also gonna be a big determinant. I mean, you know, if you're talking about giving people $10,000 versus $40,000, I mean, that's a lot, you know. $10,000 today is painting and flooring, right? I mean, versus, you know, was the intent to improve the housing stock or extend its life, you know. A coat of paint is a few years, you know.
it
Some of
looks
the
like they
other-
had like multiple programs though, right?
Right.
To kind of
Yeah.
provide resources for each of those categories.
Yeah.
Whether it was just like improving a household or developing an entire neighborhood or apartment complex for.
Yeah, they had, you're absolutely right, there's numerous programs that they had, and, you know, some of them up to 800,000
Yeah.
was the maximum, so that's not a small chunk of change.
I don't think.
Going in there, I mean, I don't know how they would have $800,000 to work
Yeah,
with,
that's good.
with the amount of money they're saying they have, but it's in there. So it's something I think that's important for us to consider as we go into any of these programs. Are we gonna try to do it that it's sustainable? And that's why I'm asking Tim to look at, are there numerous TIFs that these other communities have in place that they may extend out into the future? And, you know, I've heard the comment, you know, we don't wanna use this as an incentive to create TIFs. That's not the goal either, I mean, but people will think what they wanna think, and that's not the justification for a TIF is what I'm getting at. To say we want to have 1 year at the end, that's not at all.
People would have to wait a while before that would mature to see the benefits, I think, but
Exactly, but I just wanna make sure as we go through this and come up with a program, that we have a sustainable program as well. So somehow if we can get those two together, I'm not saying we're gonna create more TIFs, but how can we have the money make us more money? Accountant?
You could use it as leverage too.
Accountant? I'll go to,
Creative accountant. I'm okay with grants based on certain criteria that they are forgiven over a period of time. At some point in time, it's okay, it's done with. But what I heard from Sam today is not so much, and I don't know the answer to this question, but what I heard is not so much about improving, repairing, or fixing up an existing home, as much as I heard he needs, like his employees to come into Wanakee, and how does he get them to be into Wanakee? Do we offer a down payment incentive program? And that's part of what I think Lacrosse was getting at, that we will offer up to $10,000 as part of the down payment, and then pending certain criteria, it's either paid back with 1% interest, or it's forgiven over a period of time. or it could be a combination of both. To me, if you're trying to get people into this community, it's not so much the repair or fix-up as it is offering them the ability to buy a home or become invested in this community by buying a home. Now, what that does for the rental community, that's a different issue. And that's where also La Crosse was talking about granting monies to multifamily, I saw in there, and that might be the $800,000 reference. You build an apartment complex, and then you have to put something in the agreement that says you're gonna bring your financial information back to us every year. Someone from the village is gonna have to sit on and review everything, make sure all those hurdles are being met, otherwise they gotta pay back that $800,000. So I think we're talking about a lot of different things here between money for repair, maintenance, and fix-up versus down payment versus multifamily criteria, or multifamily defined as 2 units, or 4 units, or 8 units, or 16 units, or whatever it is. But I think there's a lot of, we don't have a whole lot of to play with at this point in time. What's the most impactful thing we can do right now? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
I think in La Crosse, if I recall correctly, one of our people at Extension is heavily involved in TIFs and TIDs and housing redevelopment there. The apartments and the incentive for apartment developers was in part to get some of the student housing shifted to multifamily, so that then that student housing could revert back to year-round family housing. And some of it was fixed up, but quite a few of those homes were taken down. And they were looking for more stability in neighborhoods. And then to remove, I have 2 students. One is in a great place. Both are in a great place now, but one was in your typical student chopped up house in Madison that none of us would want to live next door to. So I think that was part of, in downtown La Crosse, what they were trying to do with this as well.
I think too, just even keeping some of the students that are graduating out of they're churning talent, right? They're and they don't have a place to put them. So then they're going other places. So I think it was in their landlocked, so from like new development or whatever, it's kind of that whole, they have a conflicts of issues.
They do.
But
Yeah, very complicated housing market. Yeah.
There's another thought Madison's going through, and I had a chance to talk to one of the potential developers on the hotel, which was the old Howard Johnson's, I think it was Howard Johnson's,
East Washington?
East Washington. Now, that fell apart for many reasons, but the concept was good. Taking the local hotel and either condoing out the units or converting those into separate apartment units. And those concepts are good if that's on the board. I know they're lined up with some other folks at this point in time, but again, that's another idea, to bring in some folks in who actually would live and work in that area at that point in time. But again, it's a matter of what's the most impactful and what can we accomplish with what we have at this point in time, because the next tranche of money comes in when? If the next TID is extended, when will the next tranche come in?
I think it would be 3,
2023.
I was gonna say 3 years. I thought it was 25.
I think it's 2023.
Maybe 2023?
There's 3 or 4 tips that are gonna be closing in the next couple of years.
And I know you went through that, and I don't have the memory anymore that I can remember all the stuff, but and this is good discussion because we can kind of tee it up, but again, from my perspective, what's most impactful today? Because we can spend this money now in some form or capacity, but then getting everything lined up for the next tranche, assuming then the TID is extended 1 more year, that then helps with the other programs. If the TID's not extended, I guess it's all discussion for nothing at that point in time.
I like that because I think as you take little bits and pieces from some of these examples that we've got, some like the La Crosse, and then you have other initiatives that are going on that can be stacked with it, so we're leveraging resources. It's not just Wanakee, it's other things that are available. Jason Fields from the Madison Regional Partnership yesterday was talking about they've got a housing fund that they're going from. I don't know if it's ARPA funds or whatever that are helping to seed that or whatever, but if there's a way that we can be leveraging the resources so that when it does come time to prove like this is a valuable lesson, it's not just our plan, but it's like supported and supplemented with other resources, financial and even just the general like metrics idea of what we want that fits our community.
Well, when would you ever anticipate having $800,000 out of this TID to come to use for one apartment complex? To me, that, I don't think we're gonna have this kind of dollars, are we?
Actually, yeah, we are going to.
More than
For a
that.
couple of these, yeah, quite a bit more.
But, I mean, that means 800,000 and that's all you've got.
No, I think we're gonna have, I don't wanna, so for the camera, I may be wrong, for anybody watching, okay? But I feel like
Disclaimer.
it's gonna be closer to $3 million that we're gonna be getting when these TIFs close. If we choose to extend it for a year.
Yes, right.
If you do all of them, you're gonna have the 3 million. I guess I was thinking more in terms of that short term, the singular one that we're talking about.
I mean, I think this, one being built right now will give us kind of a good feel for, was this money well spent? Did it meet our needs? Because it's difficult, in my mind sometimes, to take $500,000 out of the tax base, or out of the general fund, and just say, because that's where it should be going. That's what the TIF was,
Right.
based on.
Right.
And we're pulling that out. And so, I think this first project will give us a good feel. It seems like the challenge is trying to find a developer like, what's her name, Esri?
Going
Cohen
Cohen
Esri?
Esri? Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't sound like there's that many of them out there that can,
Oh, there are.
There are.
Yeah, there are.
There are.
Yeah, and we've got a couple that have strong ties to the Dane County region. I'd say before, and Cohen Esri is one, and that building is one example out of many. We could, if we want to, knowing that that might be something that we want to do, we could, once the weather gets great, take a road trip and just look around the Dane County region. There is, out in Horicon, a duplex development that is smaller in scale. Downtown, the Grass Camp, which is on East Washington, it looks like a high-end building. That was a LIHTC project. It's completely occupied now, but we could probably tour some of the common areas that they have. There are quite a few in just kind of various styles of development and different flavors. And it could be really interesting to take a look at some of those things.
And the other thing to keep in mind, when we talk about the TIDs closing, we had made a decision and a long discussion about our TIDs that are 20-year TIDs that close after year 8. So we have 12 years that we're no longer going with that TID. So extending it by a year is a lot more palatable versus one that's been sitting and going for 27 or 28 years. And then we're gonna extend that on top of it. That doesn't feel as good to me or right to me, but those that, and I think we had this discussion, am I wrong?
We had that discussion, yeah.
With our healthy TIDs, it's much easier for us to do that from the tax base.
But here's my counterpoint to that, Chris, and again, I'm looking at what's most impactful today that we can make a statement in some form or another that gets this off the ground to get something accomplished. So what that is, I don't know yet, I'm listening to the discussion. However, any further discussion of 3 million or whatever the number is coming in the pipeline, that's 2, 3, 4 years down the road. I don't know what the flavor is gonna be like and the flavor of the day as to whether or not affordable housing can be an issue at that point in time. Maybe the lumber price are gonna drop, or input price will drop down to an insignificant amount and things will be booming at that point in time. I don't know. But I'd like to get something impactful today with perhaps a plan as to what is the next step, what is the next level of we wanna do. If it is up to $800,000 given La Crosse, and I'm not implying anything that's right or wrong, but that would be a good incentive if that's what I think I'm hearing from the employer, is that they need some type of multifamily. And in order for us to call someone in and maybe they don't qualify for low-income housing tax credit or they'll qualify for some other things, but we as a village can say, you know what, we'll give you the $800,000, whatever the terms and conditions are, but then we want to have these conditions as part of the process. And that is your rent on a certain number of units can't exceed X. There's criteria that's got to go into it, and that's where Tim and his department, I assume, has to do the annual accounting for it and compliance requirements for it. But every one of these programs does have compliance requirements, so there is labor involved on staff time to make sure all this stuff is monitored.
I think it's a LIHTC project, that we don't locally do the accounting for that. That is, at the state and federal level. So the money that we would put in and how those requirements are met and how many units, that's kind of determined when they're going for that funding string.
But you just changed my analysis, though. I wasn't talking about LIHTC project. I was
Okay.
talking about simply if the village wanted to promote by giving, I use that term loosely, $800,000, for whatever reason, they don't qualify for a LIHTC, or they don't qualify for any of the other grants or programs. I'm just trying to be more proactive if we say, we want to do something, and this is the commitment we're doing. We're gonna buy land. Village, which we did once before, we're gonna buy land because we think a development is worth it in this area, wherever that is. And we're gonna offer that to the developer, and whether we charge $1 or $10, I don't know. I'm just a whiteboard at this point in time, but if we want to make a statement, those are some things we could do to help this thing advance. Now, LIHTC, I understand that, and I understand they do the compliance part of it, but understand anything we do with conditions does require staff time to monitor those conditions for money that we hand out. Because I don't think we simply want to give out money and say, oh, there it is. Now we'll just trust that you're going to do it the right thing.
So it's interesting tonight, all this conversation, in my opinion, this is a very interesting conversation we're having, and my interpretation from Sam was a little bit different than yours, with how he was saying it, in that I heard Sam saying we need to help recruit people to Wanakee. And I feel that that's what we've always been doing. That's why we're a desirable community in the first place, that people want to be here. But I also interpret he wants people to be able to come here, to live here, maybe. And that's how I look at it, maybe. He's okay with them being around us, though, from what I was hearing. So that whole concept of bringing people to the community, we've done that
How?
because of where we're located. Our citizens have designated a lot of funding towards schooling to put our schools in a position.
I agree with that.
Our parks that we have in the community, our
Retail. The retail additions that have been
High
done.
level of services.
high level of services from our government, the more of we're not a big box community, we never will be, I don't believe, but we have a desirable community for that reason.
But it comes back to, Chris, WIIFM, the old radio station. What's in it for me? And I understand that, what's the 25-year or 30-year-old kid worry about some of the stuff? Government services, police are a pain in the back end for all I care. I'm just making stuff up. My point is that if and it's not just Endress Manufacturing, but others, if we can, and I referenced last time we met about communities giving $5,000 or $10,000 to people to move into their communities. It's kind of the same thing. You buy a home, we'll give you $5,000 for a down payment on your house with conditions. I'm just trying to get people to come into the community, recruiting, where it's, again, what's in it for me, not some of the softer intangibles that you're talking about.
Yeah, and I remember reading something about La Crosse, since you're doing that work in La Crosse. People go to La Crosse and buy a house for $70,000, or a house for $3 million, depending on what they're doing. But they have that ability with that because it's a much larger community where they had a stock of housing.
Right.
And they weren't having people stay there or come in there, from what I understand. So that they were giving incentives because they were losing.
I mean, I think one of the biggest challenges we have is our land price. It's honestly gonna be the biggest challenge we have. Dane County is buying up everything they can around to kind of block these communities from having large developments. So Dane County is doing that. They encourage us to do more dense, small developments. And the price of land here makes that pretty difficult.
And
We're not a community that has a bunch of farmland out there that they say, go ahead and develop. We can't do that. So, we can't buy land for, $8,000 an acre.
right, and I'm trying to stay with Al's theme right now. I don't want to vary off it. Hillsborough started a TIF for housing, and they were giving incentives for people to come in. And they started a subdivision, and I think it had 30 or 40 lots. And after 3 years of giving the incentives and everything, they had one house that was built. That's it. So part of it is demand for where people want to live. And that may be just the opposite for us, because maybe Hillsborough doesn't have that, I want to go live in Hillsborough, Wisconsin. It's out in the country, far away from most cities. Whereas here, we're in a spot that people want to be because of our proximity to Madison.
Well,
It
we haven't
just is.
heard from a lot of employers, but we just heard from Sam, you know what, my people like big lots, they like animals, they like this, they don't wanna live in a community like Wanakee, they wanna live.
I don't think he's the employer that you're really talking
Yeah.
to. I mean, you
That's what I
know,
mean, we need to talk
Yeah.
to more employers to understand what their issues are, because Sam's world didn't fit, what Wanakee is.
And Sam pays really well.
Yeah,
Andrews pays
It
very,
pays well.
yeah,
He
pays very
said
well.
every one of his employees could live here.
Yeah,
And when he started talking about multiple acres and toys and everything else, that's what they want. They don't want what we have here.
But again, I was always told, if you ever wanna make money in the stock market, quit thinking like a boomer. Think like a millennial. What do the millennials care about? What do they care about? They care about their toys. So yeah, I could move to a home in Wanakee. Or I could move to a home in Lodi. It's cheaper and I can have a bunch of toys. That's what they care about. They don't care about, at this point in time, creating roots inside of Wanakee.
Yeah, and I'll go back then and flip that and say, well, a lot of people in Wanakee work in Madison.
Yeah.
So I can be in Lodi and come to Wanakee and work, if that's what I want, from that perspective.
And that's why, from my perspective, I think we gotta come up with a program we think is the best interest of the community, and I think that's most impactful for the community. And we start off with that, and then the subsequent conversations are, where do we go with this next?
In addition to the business community, I think it'd be good to hear from the schools as far as their recruitment of teachers, and even, just because I think that's another, when you start out as a teacher, you're not making a ton of money, right? But you wanna be able to live in the community and kind of grow with that district. So I think there's a couple other, maybe it's police, fire, but your essential workers that need to be part of that conversation also.
Randy Gutenberg, I'm sure, would be happy to come here and speak on it to us.
Yeah, I'm sure. it would.
Or whoever their HR,
Yeah.
HR
Or HR
person is,
person,
yeah.
yeah.
And Tim, I'm wondering if we can revisit the housing study. The census numbers we just found out aren't gonna be released until March of this coming year. But I can't update it to 2019, the American Community Census, because some of the things when we're talking about building a program, some of those ideas were already set forth in that housing report, and then I'm wondering if we can kind of take a look at that again, and I won't be here in December, but in January I could bring
Yeah.
updated.
The task force
numbers.
report?
The housing task force report, and some of the ideas about who should we be targeting, because, they got pretty specific with number of units and, where are we seeing the gaps, in housing that's being offered here, and that might really help, because I feel like we're kind of searching around to what should we be targeting? And that might kind of help us gel some of these ideas a little bit. It's all great discussion, but if we revisit that, I think we might. And I'll take care of the number crunching for that. It's my job.
Does that need a
It's my
motion?
job. No.
Maybe the administrative, going back to Al's point, and we understand on this larger project out here, but for projects that we wanna put together with this extra, 25% or whatever it is, there's gonna be administrative work to do to try to monitor, cause when you're giving people money for whatever, how do you track that, monitor it, and who manages all that?
Yeah.
Cause there's a cost associated with that.
I think tying it to something, like you're alluding
Yeah.
to, and there's so many different programs that there's options out there that are targeting different income levels or whatever it might be, but I think tying it to something so that staff is not,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, if I may, in my opinion, that piece of it, I think, is probably easier because we can look to these other communities in terms of how they administer them and learn what works, what doesn't. So we won't have to reinvent that wheel. There may be, to your point, Al, a time component, but I think we're gonna have to crawl before we walk. I don't know how many, there's gonna be such a glut of demand for these types of projects that they're gonna be, taking up so much time to administer. But I think that piece of it anyway will be will not be as difficult. There will be a time component, but creating ways to administer it, I think there's many other communities have done that already, and we can learn from them.
I think the component from how to track it, if somebody puts a grant in an application that they need the windows fixed, it's pretty easy for them to turn a receipt into us that the work's been done, and we're giving them the check. We know what's been done at that point.
But you have inspections, you have people have to come out and, you know, show the plan, I want to renovate my house, whatever the criteria is. And some staff's gotta go there and say, okay, give me the plan, and say they gotta approve the plan, they gotta negotiate the plan. Then they have to ask for all the invoice at the back end. It just takes time. There is time involved, there is a commitment involved.
I think it's reviewing the grant applications is a big one. Once the grant application's there, it's gonna have all that information.
Well, you're not talking hundreds,
No, you're not.
you know, I mean,
Correct.
But I know how the creep occurs.
yeah.
There is time creep that occurs in these projects. So now we come up with a program, and I hope you're wrong, I hope everybody uses the program, because it's such a great deal. And there's time involved to do that, but now we come up with the next $3 million tranche, and now we got other programs we're gonna work with. And, you know, there is staff time, and I don't know, as I read the paper and I see, you know, the village of Waunakee property taxes are going up X%, and Dane County's going up Y%, and everybody's going up all the time. You never see taxes go down. Very seldom do you see taxes go down. So I am also sensitive to the creep issue.
We'll make sure Tim's job doesn't creep too much.
You crawling or walking?
So, we won't overwhelm him.
That would be a good problem to have.
Yeah.
I think that for a while anyway, there's gonna be, the funds will be finite, and so I think some of the things you're talking about, if we've already made that decision that 75-25 split, 25% of the funds will be available, and you wanna have a rolling replenishing stock, it's gonna be limited. But again, we'll start and see how it goes.
Okay, so we can talk about several things we can talk about. I mean, we really haven't come to a grip. I mean, we have our 75-25, which is great. We've established
Let's
that.
start.
But really, it's gonna come down to coming back with a program for what's gonna be eligible to apply in that grant.
Yep.
What types of things, and we need to establish that.
One of the things that's common in many of the communities seems to be geography. I know we had a lot of discussion and didn't have a lot of consensus on that, but I think that usually ranks high for communities. So if, for example, if they have a targeted, you know, a downtown area, for example, you'll see in a lot of communities that you know, as development goes outward, there's less investment in the interior part of a municipality. So I don't know if that's applicable here, but I'm just saying that would be an area where that if you have an area geography of the village that you say, yeah, this is underserved, or we'd like this use in this location, then if someone comes in and says, hey, I'd like to do a development there, then in whatever the ranking criteria, that's gonna probably score higher than if, for example, that's not a factor, or there are other factors. And I'm not necessarily saying that has to be, I'm just saying that is a frequent metric in other communities, and then especially it's downtown, or it could be like a former industrial part of a municipality that sees a lot of blight or something like that. Here's a geography that we want to incentivize investment.
Can we give this incentive to developers? And I'll use the example of the duplex on, gosh, what street is it? What's the blue duplex right off of Main Street here?
Another one you're talking about?
I mean,
Yeah.
just walked by that the other day and thought, wow, is this nice? I mean,
The one Billy Van Wee did?
Billy did, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, beautiful. I thought, that's, in these areas we're talking about where we got some houses that are, you know, people wanna sell them, and, you know, I'm thinking, why aren't we incenting a developer to come in and build these kinds of homes for people? Because to me, that, I mean, that's an attractive, it fits the neighborhood, you know, I don't know. I wish we could maybe incent developers.
So Gary, when you say these kind of homes, what do you mean? Like duplexes or?
I think they call them twin homes,
Yeah, twin homes,
Okay.
double
you know,
mortgage.
something that fits into a residential area. It's not a, you know, a 12 unit, it's not a, you know, a big, I think I was in Pella, Iowa this summer, and they took their whole Main Street. And their whole Main Street is made up of those homes, like twin homes, and it's beautiful. I mean, they, I'm sure transformed something that was there into something that's really attractive, fits the neighborhood, it's residential. I would like us to look at something like that.
You're touching on two things. One, I would say, is again, geography aware, but also, we talked about this a little bit last time in that housing stock type, that you're getting into the missing middle. So we, you know, it maybe not the 50 or 80 unit, 3 or 4 story buildings that you say is that are the priority, but maybe those smaller type of projects that you want to see more of in the village, in that affordable category, and
Right.
for that, you'd say, that's more of a priority. Let's give those types of developments emphasis.
So, you know, it's just a thought.
The only downside with I'm not sure, because I haven't thought through this a whole lot, but developers, I'd like to see the owner of that home or houses get the incentive. I mean, if that's the developer, that's fine. But developers, I've worked with enough of developers, I know they're gonna get their pay, their due at some point in time. Now, will they pass that on to someone else? I don't know if they will or won't.
It could be not a one or the other. If they're taking down blighted property and it's a redevelopment project, that at the end of the day, it's gonna make the community better off just by having that, whatever it was that was there before, replaced with something newer, fresher, brighter, and providing a housing opportunity. That, I think, would warrant it in my opinion. But on the other end of the day, if it's a new development, maybe just greenfield, then it goes to the end user, the buyer per se. So I don't know if it needs to be one or the other.
Yeah, because I can't remember on the Knightsbridge, not Knightsbridge, the boxcar houses. You know, Acres put together a proposal for that, and I think in the end, financially, they couldn't make it quite work. If I recall it right, Chris.
They needed more TIF assistance than we could give them.
So here's a great example of an area that a lot of people consider, boy, I wish we could improve this area. The developer worked everywhere he could, but he couldn't quite make it. Maybe that's where we need to step in and help them.
Mhm.
So,
I think we're moving into a TIF situation with that, because that's generally the but for, is they can't make it work without the assistance. So I think we're going out of our intent, and I don't know if we can with these funds. The 25% go to a developer. I don't know that we can do that.
I think
The
you're starting to
75%
talk
maybe?
about structures instead of people, and that's what I think our focus should be, like you talked about, teachers, or, you know, people who are already gainfully employed maybe in this community, but can't make that move into a housing. I think that needs to be more of our focus than, you know, like you say, you know, an apartment structure is a TIF program, it's not a individual incentive program, and I think it's not our bailiwick to do the TIFs. So I think we should try to keep our concentration on how do we help keep the people in town that we already have, that are part of this community, because I don't think you're gonna put out a $10 or $20, $30,000 incentive and draw in all kinds of people from outside. But you may incentive people who are trying to live here, but, you know, they're kind of on the edge, and they're already contributing to our community, so let's put our help there.
I agree, and I think if we're gonna put out RFPs or whatnot, we've gotta describe who we want to serve in terms of income and household structure, and then let the developers come to us with what that looks like, and then we hand it over to the plan commission and say, is this what fits with the goals of, this fits our economic goals in one sense, does this fit with our architecture, development, look, feel of the village in the other sense? Yeah, I agree, that's, you hit it right on the head. It's who, it's not the what, it's the who.
And we are tasked with TID right now as well.
Mhm,
So they're
yeah.
they're two different things,
Mhm.
in my opinion. Not that I didn't agree with you,
No.
I think you were onto it,
Yeah.
but I do think we need to keep that, in that land, or in that use of TIF. That is the but-for test, you just described the but-for test. They
I guess
can't make it work
I'd
without
like
it.
to make sure we understand that 25%, what can we use that for?
So I
Just
think
ask a
as
good
long
question.
as it relates somehow to housing, there's not a lot of roadblocks, really. I think that 75% is for the affordable, that
Yep.
you're talking about the who, it doesn't exceed 30% of gross household income. But the 25 could be targeted to just improving, it's pretty broad, improving area housing stock.
And I'm not sure I follow with the geography yet. I mean, I think if you're pinpointing areas we're missing, if you say downtown, or there's many sections within the community that could use assistance.
And maybe that's not the case here, I'm just saying that frequently it's in
There's a
communities.
blighted area, there's something that's,
We just- Yeah, I see our community is all aging. We talked about Arboretum over in that area, that's 20 years old already, their sport court that they put in. We're replacing the sport court, it's 20 years old, so it's not like it's growing in age across the community, which, I don't know how geography comes in, because we're kind of spread out, and we have a lot of housing in those age groups, so.
In perhaps another metric, it could be, for example, proximity to goods and services, because you may assume that people whose incomes are such that they're, having trouble meeting their housing costs, the likelihood of them having transportation cost issues and other things are such that it would make more sense to have those people closer to things where they don't necessarily have to drive, and maybe it's because some of them can't because they don't own vehicles, or only, own one vehicle amongst the household or something like that. So proximity to those goods and services could be another criteria. For example, would you incentivize, again, so that's where I'm trying to think of trying to frame geography. So would you incentivize, for example, an affordable workforce, whatever, project that's so far away that the only way you could get somewhere to those essential things you need, you have to drive, versus it could be 3-5 blocks or something like that.
Pardon?
Isn't LIHTC looks at that, don't they?
LIHTC looks at that, yeah, that's one of
That's one of
the
their
criteria.
for us, so.
Is there like a particular area that you're thinking of when you talk about geography? We talked about this
Honestly,
last
no,
time too, and I
yeah,
thought,
no, well,
maybe Tim's got some ideas in
I-
mind, and we're like
I will
not
tell you there-
picking up on it.
There's a block, there is a block I have, but this is just my opinion, so it's not, I'm saying you have to do this, but it's the old Hofbrau House,
Oh, yeah,
that block.
Brian's, what was it called?
Now, is that,
Hofbrau House.
that's a whole other discussion, is that appropriate for housing, and at what density, and what targeted end user, et cetera? But in terms of where, I'm just thinking of, since I've been here, where I've heard all the reinvestment in the community's gone previously, where the library is, where the village center is, and all those other sites that have been redeveloped, that's the only one that really jumps out at me.
But again, that's more a TIF issue than an individual program. I mean, you don't want to take, if you're gonna tear down the whole Hofbrau House to, redevelop it, that's not coming out of our TIF dollars. We don't have that kind of,
You mean coming out of these dollars?
yeah, right. Yeah.
what is this? Our 25% on this is what? How much?
Currently?
Of this, how
Just
much?
this one. yeah.
Maybe
Of this one.
70,000? I don't even know how
440
much.
minus 350, 90,000 total, 75% of that, 25% of that. So we're talking 25,000 and 75,000. 75 to affordable, 25 for other.
We had how much
We're all
total?
talking about things that need a couple more zeros.
That's why I say it's gotta be.
Those that are a few years down the road.
No, I thought they had 365.
I feel like there's, cause yeah, we just gave the 365. That was that was gone to affordable
That
housing.
went to affordable, so
So
the number should be, the other 25 should be.
I think we're somewhere between
100.
70 and 100,000, somewhere there, right
Yeah.
now in the 25% category.
Okay.
Right in that, which still
Yeah,
is.
the number's not important, it's because it's not big enough to
Well,
move the needle.
My only question is, communities of our size,
Mhm.
it sounds like the TIF things that they had $10,000 or $12,000 to deal with. To me, we've got a pretty big number here if it's 100,000. So it seems like we have, we're much different than the other communities that have put together something so far in a community of our size. I mean, we're probably 10 times more than what they've
How
had.
big is Shorewood? I have no idea.
Similar, it's 14,000.
Okay.
But incredibly.
But it's, I mean, it's all surrounded, I mean, it's all that,
Yeah.
It's
all
all
the
around
Milwaukee,
Milwaukee,
north
right?
side,
Milwaukee
Milwaukee
surrounds it,
Metro.
I think?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, I was about to say incredibly expensive homes, but,
I always thought
we're
Sherwood
on
was
Power
upper
Shore,
income.
I think, yeah.
I always thought Sherwood was upper
They're
income.
older. Some of them are more expensive.
It's
Yeah.
it's not on the
Yeah.
low end, yeah.
Yeah.
So, let's plan for our next meeting, what we're gonna actually do with this. I mean, I think we need to get to a point where we're saying, here's what our criterias are. Here's what we wanna see the funds go towards. And here's how we're gonna get there. Those two things. That's really, I mean, does everybody agree? I don't
Yeah.
wanna speak for all of us. I mean, I just see you're saying, how do we get something out here? to
Yeah,
get
see,
it-
and I
to get-
was gonna, once you finish, I was gonna say, you know, I think there's, now we got the money today versus the money in the future. And the money in the future, we have a little more time. The money today, I guess I'd like to see a little more action on that. And if not, we're gonna be holding on to this until 2023 or whenever that next tranche comes in. But I'd like to see something in advance of that, otherwise we just plod along too slow.
Yeah, so if we've got it, we know what our numbers are gonna be. Maybe that's something, I'm sure we have in front of us next time to say, here's how many dollars we have. Here's how many are designated to one area. Because all of it can go towards affordable housing if we
Right,
want.
right.
It doesn't have to go anywhere else, but I see where there's gonna be advantages for those who need to have some work done on their house. Whether, maybe it's insulation. Insulation's gonna save them a lot of money potentially.
I like the down payment assistance programs too, because that can be the difference between someone who's going to have a decent salary, going to make money, but just doesn't have the upfront cash to make it happen,
Yeah.
staying here.
See, and from my perspective, you talk about how do you make money. If we're gonna do the repair, maintenance, or fix-up improvement program, to me, whether they pay that money back or not, doesn't matter, because the value of the home just went up. And now we get higher real estate taxes, which then eventually comes back into the village. So it's a self-serving prophecy at that point in time.
Yeah, but those funds more than likely wouldn't come back into this to replenish. They'd go to the other stuff. Just, you know,
Yeah. You're making, yeah, and you're making a statement that says you want some kind of self-funding program, whereas I'm not on that same ship you are yet.
yeah, I don't want it to be that it's completely reliant on a TIF closing.
Mhm.
How can we get additional funding to come flow into this somehow?
Okay, well, that's the challenge, then, we figure that out.
The pot, so to speak, not real pot. I don't mean it that way, that we don't wanna, but you know what I'm saying.
I don't know what that is.
I was in Denver, you'll find out if you go there. So, does that seem like a route we wanna take, guys? I mean, let's get this moving along a
Yeah.
little bit more quickly, and let's dig deep into say, all right, here's what criterias are going to be. We know what the funding is going to be, so how much we can dedicate towards that, what's maximums people can get from the program. And then, as we're going, since we know we're gonna have a couple of years, we have to figure out how we can make this more self-sustaining over the next year or two. Right now, it's gonna be hard for us to do that, because there's just not enough funds
Mhm.
to say.
And understand, even if we were to have some type of self-sustaining program on this first tranche that we have, the payback could be 5, 10, 15, 20 years out, depending on the program we come up with. So you may not see those dollars for a long time. I won't be around.
How can we keep you here, Al?
I might be. I'll say it that way, I might be, I don't know for sure with that. So, all right,
Okay.
is everybody good with that process? Yes?
Yeah.
Tim, do you have enough to go off from that?
I think so, just
Where
to
to go with it?
clarify too, to what Kristen said, using the recommendations from the Housing Task Force as a springboard to start discussion next time, does that make sense?
It does. I won't be at the next meeting, but I'll get you an update.
And so do you, for now, you just
For
need that
the-
report?
In January, in January, I can have a presentation which compares some of the things that we had in there, like 30% of AMI. That, of course, has shifted, both for Dane County and for Wanakee, as with the numbers of people that fall into those categories. So I can update all of those tables, but I probably won't be able to get that done before the next meeting.
So if I'm okay with saying this then, Kristen,
Yeah.
let's plan for that portion of things in January.
Cool.
And next meeting, if you are able to get Randy from the school district to come in, and then one other employer, we want to hear from them first. It'll be interesting to me, because my wife is a teacher, so I know about teachers a little bit. A lot of them don't live in Wanakee because they don't want to live in Wanakee with their students,
Okay.
which is an interesting
Yeah,
makes sense.
concept.
Don't want to run into their kids.
That's their way of getting away, so to speak, from those kids.
I have one correction to what you said, though. Our
Feel free.
January 18th meeting is on the TIF issue. We aren't going to, I don't think there's gonna be much more on the agenda than just dealing with the TIF.
That's up to you.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
Then maybe we want to go to February with yours.
Sure.
You have a little extra
Whatever.
time then.
I do. If
With
we
that.
push it out till March, I'll have the 2020
I just don't know what the
census numbers.
expectations are come January. We can talk
So-
about this. Is it gonna be a 5-minute discussion and we're
Yeah,
done?
you'll
or-
be back in March.
So hopefully we can have the two speakers,
February.
and then we'll discuss those the other things,
First week of
processes.
February.
Yep, if we are able, so I think having Rebecca come in may start, have you think about criteria too, because even though it's a different program, they use criteria to score LIHTC projects, and then they, okay, well, maybe we want to mirror that or do some flavor of what they do.
And we should
So-
maybe find out from Jason too what MadRep is thinking with their program. I don't think it's fully baked yet, so it might be a good time to just weigh in and see how that would affect like Wanakee, or what we'd be able to tap into for that.
I do want
All right,
to hear it.
I think we're good for tonight.
I think we're good.
Yep.
How do you keep?
Move to adjourn.
Motion by
Second.
Kristen, and second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, everybody.
Someone's hungry.
Have a great Thanksgiving.
I'm starving.